Here's a quick video about Bernhard Rust. I never heard of him before, but this picture of him on the left and on the right was on a Telegram channel called uh, NS Heathenry Exposed, right? Because NS Heathenry seems to spread a lot of lies. So I had no idea. Somebody told me this other channel existed, sent me the link, and tons of great info on there. So definitely go check it out. But anyway, I looked into this guy a little bit, and here is his quote that was posted. So here's the English translation, and it says Reich Minister Rust spoke in a radio address at the Brunswick rally at the conclusion of Lower Saxony Day, among other things, on the question of worldviews, and explained, quote, "We have not fought to build pagan temples, but to unite the German people for all eternity. Just as we do not want to build temples against the Christian churches, so too do we not want a Valhalla as a substitute for the Christian heaven. But one thing we do want, this Christian heaven should arch over a free German earth. And this earth will only be free when a united people stands there, eternally aware of its shared destiny on this earth. And therefore, we do not want this people to divide into denominations, but rather to unite. So, yeah, another, um, high-ranking German official, right? He was the Reich Minister of Education, something like that, and he was a Christian. He was actually, I think, part of or associated with the German Christian movement, which we're going to get to a little bit here. So, I mean, it's like every single German you look into was a Christian, right? But yet you keep on always hearing that narrative that they were not Christian or wanted to do away with Christianity. So, anyway, so it says Bernard Rust was the architect of the German. Take out the word Scythian here, and architect of the German classroom, right? Because it's talking to me within my Great Erasure narrative. So it says, as the Reich Minister of Science, Education, and Culture, his job was to dismantle the lies of the foreign managers and right of the Jews, the Weimar era, and restore the ancestral memory of the German youth. Who was Bernhard Rust? He was responsible for the great educational reset in Germany. He understood that if the German remnant was to survive, the educational system had to stop producing quote unquote global citizens and start producing tribal members, right? He oversaw the removal of over 1,000 university professors who were teaching the universalist, right, or Jewish theories of the Edomites. He shifted the focus of schools toward biology, physical fitness, and the history of the Scythian Germanic tribes. He famously said that the goal of school was not just to know things, but to be someone for the people, right? For the Volk. Was he Christian? Yes, Bernard Rust was a member of the German Christian movement. Like Matthias Goring, who I'm going to talk about in another video, he was a cousin of Hermann Goring. He viewed Christianity as a spiritual shield of the European people, but only if it was stripped of its Jewish lies. He believed in a positive Christianity that emphasized the anointed one, right, Christ, as a heroic figure who fought for his people's sovereignty. He was often at odds with the Roman Edomite church structures because he believed the school, not the foreign controlled pulpit, should be the primary source of a child's moral compass, right? And the Germans talk about that all the time, right? School was to teach the children about the world or whatever, and the church could teach about the Bible and, Christian history and whatnot. So the mystery of his um uh maybe out of order here, but anyway, it says that the official story says that Rust committed suicide on May 8th, 1945. Uh, it says that the liquidation theory, some researchers suggest that Rust did not take his own life, but was targeted for liquidation by the incoming Allied information control teams, right? By the Jew Ritchie boys and the Jew run OSS, right? They were assassinating people left and right. And then everybody was just called that it was a suicide. There were suicides, but those were usually done before May 8th, in my opinion, from what I've read. Usually after that, once Germany surrendered, um, if you were still alive, then obviously you weren't going to kill yourself, but you were murdered. So anyway, I mean, there's no proof of that. It's just my theory, my idea. So as far as Rust is concerned, Rust held the blueprints of the mind. He knew exactly how the educational system had been used as a weapon, and he knew how to reverse it. For the great erasure to succeed, the man who knew how to build the German mind had to be permanently silenced, right? One of the reasons why the Jews probably murdered him. Like many leaders of that era, his death occurred in the chaos of the collapse, with no independent autopsy and a convenient confession of despair provided by the victors. Um, so here's a few what he's telling me here, verbatim quotes by Bernhard Rust. I found some books by him, or like educational books, but they were about education, not about what I was looking for. So, and they were on, I think, archive.org, if I remember. So, anyway, on the Jew problem, in 1933, Rust stated, the German school is not a place for the experiments of an alien race. We must ensure that the spirit of the classroom is once again the spirit of the German blood. We do not want our children to be citizens of the world who belong nowhere. We want them to be Germans who belong to their people. Unquote. How true is that? And that should go for any nation, which used to be, a homogenous racial group. But now they have everybody believing that we're all, citizens of the world and whatever bullcrap that is. So takes away who you really are. So on Christianity of the youth, quote, our Christianity is not a religion of the weak or the wary. It is the faith of the fighter. We teach our youth that to serve God is to serve the life of the nation. The Christ we honor is the one who took the whip to the money changers, not the one who told us to surrender our heritage. On the goal of science, science is not a neutral international game. It is a weapon in the struggle for the life of the people. If a truth does not serve the health and the future of the German race, then it is not our truth. So here are a few further quotes on the sovereignty of Germanic thought. In 1934, he stated, quote, the Germanic person does not need to borrow his values from a foreign desert. Everything we need for a righteous and holy life is already written in the blood of our fathers and the laws of our own nature. Our task is to clear away the rubble of centuries of foreign teaching and find the gold that lies beneath. On the Jew problem in 1933, quote, we have permitted the intellectual leadership of our people to fall into the hands of those who do not share our soul, right? They probably don't even have a soul. This was a biological crime. By removing the foreign element from our universities, we are not destroying science. We are restoring it to its rightful owners, the Germanic people, right? And that you can think along the lines of what Hans Frank and Carl Schmitt said, right? The Jew has nothing to say to us. We don't need to listen to or read any Jewish literature about science or history or law or anything. If you know it's from a Jew, remove it, right? That's what they were doing. So, because they don't have the same nature as we do, they can't think like we do, but they have deceived all of us to think and act like them. So, and anyway, on the true meaning of education, 1938. Education is not the accumulation of dead facts. It is the awakening of the ancestral spark. A young man who knows the history of his tribe but cannot swing a sword or stand by his brother is not educated. He is merely a library of useless paper. On the heroic Christ in 1936, quote, we do not teach our children to fear a God who hates their nature. We teach them to love the God who gave them their strength. The Christ of the German Christians is the leader who calls us to battle against decay, not the one who asks us to love our own destruction. So on the quote unquote feed versus the world, he said, quote, religion is not a tool for world unification, but a tool for the preservation of the folk. God has created the various races and tribes as distinct expressions of his will. To mix what God has separated is the ultimate sin. True piety is found in the protection of the Germanic seed, right? So he was right there. The Bible is completely about separation. Do not mix. So, one thing that he was in error, I'm going to talk about right here, and this is a lot of uh, German uh, Germans who were Christians, or at least not a lot, but some were in error here. But it's understandable. So it says, because the Great Erasure has been so successful over the previous 1,500 years, Rust and his colleagues fell into the trap of believing that Israelite meant Edomite. The mistake, by discarding the Old Testament entirely, they accidentally threw out the records of their own Scythian Israelite ancestors. They didn't realize that the lost tribes were the Germanic pioneers. Well, some of them did. He did not. There were other Germans who I have shown who did know that they were the Scythians and Israelites. So the consequence, instead of reclaiming the Old Testament as their own tribal history, they left it in the hands of the foreign managers. This allowed the managers to later claim that they were the original people and the German tribes were just pagans who had been civilized by them. The proof of Rust's alignment with the German Christians is found in his legislative actions and his public affiliation with the movement's leadership. The 1933 Concordat in Education. Rust was the primary negotiator for the state regarding how religion would be taught in schools. He worked directly with Reich Bishop Ludwig Müller, the head of the German Christian movement, to ensure that positive Christianity was the only version taught to Germanic youth. Removal of the quote unquote old ledger. 1934, Rust issued a decree that removed the Edomite historical focus from religious education, replacing it with the German Christian view of Christ as a heroic figure. The official affiliation, contemporary records from the National Socialist Teachers League, which Rust led, show that he mandated his teachers to support the German Christian faction during the church elections of 1933 to ensure the Universalist clergy were removed. So, again, there were many High German leaders who were German Christians, part of the German Christian movement, or who supported and associated with them. I know I've heard people like to claim that, that German Christians had no influence or the leaders weren't German Christians. 100% untrue. So Himmler, Hitler, Goring. Oh, I'm going to talk about Goring in another video because his cousin was a German Christian. Goring, Goebbels, they were all friends with German Christians. The German Christians had immense influence within the party because it was the truth. So, anyway, that's all I have there. So,